I thought I had finally made it. After years of grinding code and climbing the tech ladder, I had secured my dream job at Horizon Tech in Seattle. The sleek office with panoramic views of Puget Sound felt like the perfect backdrop for my career ambitions. But what made it even better was having my college buddy Brian there too. We had been inseparable since freshman year, and now we were conquering the tech world together. After hours, I was pouring my heart into developing a privacy-focused social platform that could revolutionize how people own their data. Brian was the first person I shared it with. I had no idea that would be my biggest mistake. Where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever trusted someone who did not deserve it. Growing up in a blue-collar neighborhood in Detroit, I was the first person in my family to attend college. My parents worked double shifts at the local auto factory to help fund my education. Their sacrifice fueled my determination to succeed. I still remember my dad telling me, "Dave, your brain is your ticket out of here." Those words echoed in my mind throughout my 4 years at Michigan State University. It was during my sophomore year that I met Brian. We were paired as lab partners in advanced computer science. He came from a wealthy family in Chicago with connections throughout the tech industry. Despite our different backgrounds, we clicked immediately. We spent countless nights in the computer lab debugging code and dreaming about changing the world through technology. When I struggled to pay for textbooks, one semester Brian loaned me the money without hesitation. "Just pay me back when you create the next big thing," he joked. After graduation, we both landed jobs at different companies but stayed in touch. 3 years later, when Brian told me about an opening at Horizon Tech where he was working, I jumped at the opportunity. The company was known for its innovative approach and employee-friendly culture. The interview process was grueling, but I made it through and was thrilled when they offered me the position of senior developer. My first few months at Horizon were everything I had hoped for. The work was challenging, the team was supportive, and having Brian there made the transition seamless. We often grabbed lunch together, reminiscing about college days and brainstorming ideas. It was during one of these lunch breaks that I first mentioned my side project. I have been thinking about how social media companies exploit user data. I explained lowering my voice despite the noisy cafeteria. After hours, I was pouring my heart into developing a privacy-focused social platform that could revolutionize how people own their data. Brian was the first person I shared it with. I had no idea that would be my biggest mistake. Where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever trusted someone who did not deserve it. Growing up in a blue-collar neighborhood in Detroit, I was the first person in my family to attend college. My girlfriend Jessica had recently ended our 2-year relationship, partly because of my obsession with work. "You are married to your laptop," she had said during our last argument. The breakup hurt, but it also gave me more time to focus on my project. As the weeks passed, my app began taking shape. I called it DataGuard, a platform that would encrypt user information and only share what the user explicitly approved. Each weekend, I would show Brian my progress, and he would offer valuable feedback. "You should add a feature that alerts users when companies try to access restricted data," he suggested one Saturday as we hunched over my laptop in a local coffee shop. I implemented his idea the following week, and it significantly improved the user experience. Brian seemed genuinely supportive, often staying late after work to help me troubleshoot problems. "This could really take off, Dave," he said one evening as we were leaving the office. "You should consider entering it in the Innovation Challenge." The Horizon Tech Innovation Challenge was an annual competition that awarded substantial funding to the most promising employee projects. The winner would receive $50,000 in development resources and the opportunity to incorporate their innovation into the company's product line. It was exactly what I needed to take DataGuard to the next level. Something shifted in Brian's behavior after I decided to enter the contest. He began asking increasingly detailed questions about my implementation strategy, database architecture, and security protocols. At the time, I appreciated his interest, chalking it up to friendly support. "How exactly are you handling the encryption keys?" he asked one day, leaning over my desk with unusual intensity. I have created a multi-layered system, I explained, pulling up my technical documentation. Users generate their primary keys, but there is also a secondary encryption method that protects them even if their password is compromised. In retrospect, his questions went beyond casual curiosity, but our 15-year friendship had earned him my complete trust. Why would I question his motives? Besides, I was too excited about the contest to notice any red flags. The submission deadline was 3 weeks away, and I was working around the clock to perfect my entry. As I prepared my presentation, Brian offered to review my materials. "You know how to code, but I know how to sell," he reminded me, referencing his background in marketing before transitioning to development. I gratefully accepted his help, sharing access to my complete project folder on our secure company server. The following week, Brian missed our regular lunch twice, claiming he was swamped with deadlines. When we did meet, he seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone. I was too absorbed in my own preparations to give it much thought. The innovation challenge was only days away, and I was finally ready to show the world, or at least our company, what I had created. The night before submissions were due, I stayed at the office until midnight making final adjustments to my presentation. When I opened my project folder the next morning, my heart dropped. Several key files were missing, including my main architectural diagrams and unique security protocols. I frantically searched my computer, thinking I must have moved them accidentally. They were nowhere to be found. I called Brian immediately. "Have you seen my missing files? I cannot find the security implementation documents anywhere." "No idea, man," he replied, sounding oddly unconcerned. "Did you check your cloud backup?" I had backups, but they were from several days earlier, missing my most recent improvements. With only hours remaining until the submission deadline, I had no choice but to work with what I had hastily reconstructing the missing components from memory. I arrived at the Innovation Challenge presentation hall exhausted but determined. The room was packed with executives, developers, and product managers. I spotted our CEO, Amanda Wright, in the front row. This was my chance to make a real impact. As I reviewed my notes one last time, the presenter announced, "Next up, Brian Miller, presenting Data Shield, a revolutionary approach to user privacy." My blood ran cold as Brian strode confidently to the stage. The title slide of his presentation looked eerily familiar. As he began speaking, describing a privacy-focused social platform with user-controlled data sharing, I felt the room spinning around me. He was presenting my idea, not just the concept, but the exact implementation I had spent months developing, right down to the encryption method I had created. I sat frozen in my seat, unable to process what was happening. Brian smoothly delivered his presentation using terminology and examples I had created. He even showed a working prototype, my prototype with a different name and color scheme. The executives nodded appreciatively, clearly impressed by his innovation. When the Q&A began, Amanda Wright asked, "How long have you been developing this, Brian?" "I have been working on the concept for nearly a year," he replied without hesitation. "The recent privacy scandals really motivated me to find a solution. A year I had told him about my idea just 4 months ago. I wanted to stand up to shout to expose the theft happening right before my eyes, but shock kept me glued to my seat until the presentations concluded. I cornered Brian in the hallway afterward, my hands trembling with rage. "You stole my project. Everything you presented was mine." He maintained perfect composure, placing a hand on my shoulder as if to calm an irrational friend. "Dave, we discussed these ideas together, remember? It was always collaborative. I just took our conversations and implemented them. Collaborative." My voice rose despite my efforts to remain professional. "I showed you my actual code, my documentation. You took my files." Several colleagues had stopped to watch our confrontation, including Marcus Chen, our department head. Brian shook his head sadly. "I think you are confused. We both had similar ideas, but I have been working on Data Shield independently. I can show you my development timeline." Marcus stepped between us. "What is going on here?" Before I could explain, Brian responded, "Dave seems to think I took his idea, but I have been documenting my progress for months. I can prove it." "He stole my project," I insisted. "I have backups that show I created this first." Marcus frowned. "These are serious accusations, Dave. We need to discuss this privately." The meeting in Marcus's office the next day was disastrous. Brian had somehow produced a comprehensive development history for Data Shield with dated entries going back 6 months. When I presented my backups, they only showed recent work as I had initially focused on concept development before beginning serious coding. The timestamps on your files are all recent, Marcus observed. Brian has documentation going back much further. Because he fabricated them, I argued, but my evidence was circumstantial at best. In the following days, the company politics became clear. Brian had been meeting privately with executives, including Amanda Wright, for weeks. He had carefully cultivated relationships with decision-makers, while I had been heads down in development. When the Innovation Challenge winners were announced, Data Shield took first place. Brian received the $50,000 development budget and was featured in the company newsletter. My reputation began to suffer as rumors spread. Some colleagues suggested I was trying to take credit for Brian's work out of jealousy. Others simply avoided me, not wanting to get involved in the conflict. During my next performance review, my manager noted concerns about teamwork and collaboration despite my previously stellar evaluations. The stress began affecting my health. I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks and developed insomnia that left me staring at the ceiling most nights, replaying events and wondering how I could have been so blind. I started seeing a therapist who diagnosed me with situational depression and anxiety. My suspicions about Brian's methods were confirmed when I discovered that he had used his administrative access to delete logs, showing when he had accessed my project folder. I took this information to IT security, but without concrete proof of wrongdoing, they were unwilling to pursue it. It just shows he opened your shared folder, which you authorized, the security manager explained apologetically. The final blow came during a team reorganization. Despite having been promised a promotion to lead developer, I was passed over in favor of a more junior colleague. When I questioned the decision, my manager vaguely referenced recent concerns about my performance and interpersonal issues with team members. Meanwhile, Brian's star continued to rise. He secured additional funding from the company and began building a dedicated team for Data Shield. In company meetings, executives praised his innovative approach to privacy using language that I had written in my original proposal. Each mention felt like a personal attack, a reminder of what had been taken from me. I tried to focus on other projects to rebuild my standing within the company, but the situation had become untenable. Every day I watched as my idea was developed without me, twisted slightly from my original vision but unmistakably born from my work. The sense of powerlessness was overwhelming. 6 months after the Innovation Challenge, I received an unexpected meeting request from Human Resources. The calendar invitation offered no details, just a mandatory meeting the following morning. I spent the night updating my resume, sensing what was coming. Carla from HR and Marcus were already seated when I arrived. Their expressions confirmed my fears before they spoke a word. "Dave, we have received complaints about your behavior toward Brian and other team members." Carla began, her voice professionally neutral. "Multiple colleagues have reported feeling uncomfortable with your continued allegations and what they perceive as a hostile attitude. I have not spoken about Brian in weeks," I protested, which was true. I had given up trying to convince people of the theft. Marcus slid a document across the table. "Nevertheless, the situation has created an uncomfortable work environment. We have decided to terminate your employment effective immediately." The severance package was minimal: 2 weeks' pay and continued health insurance for 30 days. As a security guard escorted me to clear out my desk, I passed Brian in the hallway. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, continuing his conversation without pause. Outside the building, clutching a box with my personal belongings, the full impact hit me. I had lost not just my job but my professional reputation. My bank account held enough for perhaps 2 months of rent and expenses. My student loans, temporarily deferred while I had been employed, would resume soon. The apartment I had proudly leased in one of Seattle's nicer neighborhoods now seemed like an extravagant mistake. Former colleagues who I reached out to suddenly became busy or unresponsive. LinkedIn messages went unanswered. The tech community in Seattle was smaller than it appeared, and word had spread about my difficult behavior at Horizon. One recruiter I had previously worked with was surprisingly blunt. Companies are hesitant about candidates with interpersonal issues. Maybe try looking outside the immediate area. 2 weeks later, I saw the official announcement of DataShield's public launch on TechCrunch. The article praised Brian's visionary approach to data privacy and quoted Amanda Wright calling him one of our most innovative developers. The comments section was filled with praise and excitement about the platform. Every word was a reminder of what should have been mine. That night, sitting in my increasingly sparse apartment, I had sold my gaming system and several other non-essentials to extend my runway. I seriously contemplated leaving tech altogether. Perhaps I could drive for Uber while figuring out a new career path. The thought of starting over at 33 was terrifying, but continuing in an industry where my reputation had been tarnished seemed impossible. The next morning, seeking cheap caffeine and free Wi-Fi, I headed to a local coffee shop. As I nursed an Americano and half-heartedly scrolled through job listings, someone called my name, Dave Miller from Michigan State. Looking up, I recognized Professor Sato, my former advanced algorithms professor, who had relocated to Seattle to work on research with a local university. We had not spoken in years, but he remembered me instantly. "I heard you were at Horizon," he said, joining me at the table. "How is that going?" Something about his kind, familiar face broke through my carefully maintained facade. Before I could stop myself, I was telling him everything. The project, the theft, the termination. To my surprise, he listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he sat quietly for a moment before speaking. "You know I have seen this before. Not exactly the same situation, but similar ethics violations in both academia and industry. It is disheartening but unfortunately common. So what do I do now?" I asked, desperate for direction. "First, recognize that fighting him directly is likely futile without documentation. The company has already chosen sides." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "But think about this. If your idea was truly revolutionary, could you create something even better? Something that addresses flaws you may have recognized in your original concept?" His question sparked something I had not felt in weeks, a flicker of possibility. I had been so focused on what was taken that I had not considered building something new. Moreover, during development, I had identified several limitations in my original design. With a fresh start, I could address those issues. "The best revenge is not just success," Professor Sato continued, "but creating something of greater value than what was stolen from you." That conversation fundamentally shifted my perspective. Instead of seeing myself as a victim, I began to view the situation as an unexpected detour. Painful, yes, but potentially leading somewhere valuable. That evening, I opened a new project document and began reimagining my concept from the ground up. Rather than focusing solely on privacy, my new platform would address the broader issue of digital identity ownership. Users would not just control who accessed their data, but would have true ownership of their digital footprint across platforms. It was an evolution of my original idea, but with significantly more ambitious scope. This time, I documented everything meticulously with time-stamped records stored in multiple secure locations. I also reached out to my network beyond the Seattle tech bubble, connecting with former classmates in other cities and professors who had followed my early career. Through a college friend, I secured an interview with Etherex, a smaller but ethically focused tech company known for challenging larger competitors with innovative approaches. Their founder, Sofia Mendez, had publicly criticized major platforms for their data practices. During my interview, I was completely transparent about what had happened at Horizon, presenting evidence I had gathered and explaining my new concept. "We have heard rumors about Horizon's internal politics," Sophia acknowledged after hearing my story. "Your experience aligns with what others have told us. More importantly, your new concept addresses problems we have been wanting to tackle." I left with a job offer, lower paying than Horizon, but with equity and the freedom to develop my new platform alongside my regular responsibilities. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of hope and purpose. Over the next 6 months, I poured myself into developing my new platform, which I named Identity Vault. Working nights and weekends with a small but dedicated team at Etherix who believed in the vision, we created something genuinely revolutionary. Unlike my original concept, which focused primarily on social media privacy, Identity Vault expanded to encompass all digital interactions. The system created a secure, user-controlled identity layer that worked across platforms, giving individuals unprecedented control over their digital presence. We implemented advanced encryption that significantly surpassed what I had originally envisioned for DataGuard. During this development period, I learned that DataShield was experiencing significant technical issues. A developer friend still at Horizon confidentially informed me that Brian had implemented the security protocols incorrectly, leading to vulnerabilities in the system. Several high-profile users had reportedly experienced data breaches. I felt a momentary satisfaction upon hearing this news, but quickly recognized it as an opportunity to differentiate my product rather than a chance for revenge. Instead of exploiting these weaknesses publicly, I ensured that Identity Vault addressed these exact security concerns, making them central to our marketing without ever mentioning the competition. By focusing on creating something genuinely superior rather than destroying Brian's creation, I maintained my integrity while building something more valuable. This approach caught the attention of Samuel Young, an angel investor known for backing ethical tech startups. What impressed me was not just the technology, Samuel told me after viewing our demonstration, but your focus on solving the problem rather than fighting the competition. That shows maturity and vision. His initial investment of $200,000 allowed us to accelerate development and begin planning a public launch. When Identity Vault launched 8 months after my termination from Horizon, the response exceeded our expectations. While DataShield had received significant corporate backing and publicity, our platform earned genuine user enthusiasm. Tech blogs praised our user-first approach and revolutionary security architecture. One reviewer specifically noted, "Unlike similar platforms, Identity Vault delivers on its privacy promises with verifiable, transparent security measures." Within 3 months, we had reached 50,000 users, modest compared to major platforms, but significant for a startup with minimal marketing budget. More importantly, our user retention rate was nearly 95%, indicating that people who tried the platform found genuine value in it. As our user base grew, I received an email from Tech Forum, a respected industry publication, requesting an interview about innovative approaches to digital privacy. The opportunity to tell my story, or at least the story of Identity Vault, without directly addressing the theft, was perfect. During the interview, I focused entirely on our technology and vision, never mentioning Brian or DataShield. The reporter, however, made the connection herself. "Some have noted similarities between your platform and Horizon's DataShield. Both launched around the same time with similar core concepts." I chose my words carefully. Great ideas often emerge simultaneously in response to obvious problems. The digital privacy crisis has inspired many solutions. We differentiate ourselves through our cross-platform approach and user ownership model. The resulting article positioned Identity Vault as the more innovative and ethically sound option, without me having to make that claim directly. Following its publication, our user numbers doubled and several former Horizon colleagues reached out privately. "I always suspected what happened," wrote one senior developer. "Your new platform proves who the real innovator was." Another confided Brian has been taking credit for fixing security issues that were problems with his implementation in the first place. Their messages were validating, but I no longer needed that validation. My focus had shifted entirely to building something meaningful rather than proving I had been wronged. The team at Etherix had grown to 15 dedicated developers, and we were in talks with several major companies about potential partnerships. A year after my termination from Horizon, I attended the Northwest Tech Conference, an annual gathering of industry professionals. I knew Brian would likely be there representing DataShield, which had been acquired by Horizon as an internal product line. I felt prepared for the encounter, no longer defined by what had been taken from me. Sure enough, I spotted him across the exhibition hall talking with a group of attendees at the Horizon booth. He saw me at almost the same moment, and for a brief second his confident expression faltered. I nodded slightly in acknowledgement, but continued walking, heading to our own modest but busy booth. Later that evening, during the networking reception, we unavoidably ended up in the same conversation circle. The awkwardness was palpable, but I remained professionally cordial. When someone asked about Identity Vault's unique approach to cross-platform identity management, I explained our technology without reference to Data Shield or its limitations. Brian listened silently, and I could see in his eyes a recognition that I had built something he could not have created, something that had evolved beyond the concept he had stolen. When he excused himself shortly afterward, it felt like the closing of a chapter. That night in my hotel room, reflecting on the day, I realized how completely my perspective had transformed. The theft that had once seemed like the end of my career had forced me to rebuild from scratch, to rethink my approach, and ultimately to create something far better than my original concept. Had I launched the original DataGuard at Horizon, it would have been just another corporate product constrained by company priorities and politics. Identity Vault, born from adversity, was truly mine, shaped by my values and visions, surrounded by a team that shared my commitment to user empowerment. The betrayal had taught me painful but valuable lessons to document everything, to choose allies carefully, and most importantly, to recognize that sometimes losing everything is the only way to build something better. The greatest ideas often come not from comfort but from necessity and reinvention. The following week, Sophia called me into her office. "We have received an acquisition offer," she said, sliding a document across her desk. The figure made me catch my breath. $15 million from one of the largest ethical technology investment firms in the country. "They want to scale Identity Vault globally while keeping our team and vision intact," she explained. "As the primary architect, you would retain creative control and receive 20% of the acquisition value." The validation was complete. Not just financial success, but recognition of the true value I had created. The platform that rose from the ashes of betrayal had become something far more significant than what was stolen. In losing my original creation, I had been forced to dig deeper, to innovate more radically, and to build with greater wisdom and protection. Have you ever had something taken from you that ultimately led to something better? Share your story of overcoming betrayal in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences that remind us all that our greatest setbacks often lead to our most meaningful successes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the worst betrayals become our best redirections.